G'day, Peter here. I'm author of a book called Why Are You Still a Slave? And I've been quietly watching the progress of the coronavirus, and I studied economics and I know a fair bit about economics. I've been studying it for 20 years, and there's something wrong with how the Western world has addressed this situation. The thing is, it makes no sense to crash our economy in this way. But unless you're looking at a greater geopolitical strategy, and I think the greater geopolitical strategy is that the West needs to decouple from China and having a virus come out of China, and then if they'd handled it really well and the virus had no or little impact like it had in Vietnam. I mean, it's impacted Vietnam, but there's only 300 or 270 people that actually got coronavirus here out of 100 million people. And in all of that, there was 0 people dying. So when you compare that to the Western world, where Australia's got 20 million people, and I think we've got a couple of hundred deaths, which is pretty good compared to America and the UK. But when you compare the numbers, still Vietnam handled it really, really well. So, and it doesn't make a lot of sense for why the West would not handle this situation really well unless you think about the motives. And I mean, I wrote a book about it. I think about these things a lot, and I just think that where you've got a corporate democracy, or a corporatised democracy, as Noam Chomsky would refer to it, you have a situation where the profit motive and the obligation of the CEOs is to act in the profit motive, not the best interest of the society. So they've got no interest in acting in the best interest of society. Their obligation under the law is actually to make the most profit for their shareholders. So in that situation, if they, mobilised themselves quickly, distributed masks quickly, ran marketing campaigns quickly, the same way as Vietnam did, where Vietnam's got loud hailers that literally, cover the whole country. So the Vietnamese government can get onto the mic and at 6 in the morning go testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, everybody up and go to work now. And it's quite annoying. But during the coronavirus, Vietnam got on the mic, said, "Hey, everybody, there's a new virus coming out of China. Anybody that's come from China, please report to the local police for testing. Anybody who feels sick, go straight to your hospital." And they were all over it. And they stopped people from profiteering from it, in fact, because they, if anybody bought masks and then was trying to sell them online at a dearer price to the normal price, which started to happen early on, the government just came in and said, "That's it, we're passing a law that says if you do that, we're going to take your whole stockpile of masks off you and hand them out for free." And so they actually did that. Like, I was driving along the street on my motorbike and here's government officials handing out free masks, right? Now, but they were masks that they got from people who were trying to do the wrong thing by the society by charging people who were scared a lot more money and making money out of this situation. Now, the other thing they did was they said, "Hey, if anybody is scaremongering and passing out fake news on social media, we're going to fine you." It's fake news. If you say things that are wrong on social media and you try and cause a panic, or you try and scare people into buying your products or that, then we're going to fine you. Now that's because the Vietnamese government is a communist government. They don't have a profit motive. They're not run by corporations. They're not, They don't have a conflict of interest between solving the problem quickly and their obligation to make money. Now, I'd argue that America has a real conflict of interest. It's corporates and that are sponsoring the election at the moment for Trump, and that if Trump had handled the virus really, really well, those people wouldn't make money out of it. There is so much money made out of a government bailout. All of the wealthy companies got hundreds of billions of dollars thrown at them by the government, free. They never had to work for it. And they just go and buy a new jet, and they cry that, oh, hey, oh, it's terrible. But that's really the quickest way for them to make money. And now, sure, there's lots of good corporations around, right? And it's just like good and bad people. Some people in society are bad, and some people in society are good. Unfortunately, in order for you to be a successful CEO, it's proven that you have to be a personality type that's more like a sociopath than not. The more that you don't care about other people's feelings, the more successful you can make a company, because you'll make decisions that hurt people just for the profit motive, and that makes you successful. So this is written into the fabric of all Western societies, is this profit motive. Now, there's lots of people who don't understand politics at all, right? And we all get told, communism's bad and socialism's bad in the West, But I would argue that in the West, we've got a more communist society and a more socialist society than we do here in Vietnam. Now, I've chosen to live in Vietnam, and one of the reasons is that it's more capitalist than Australia is, and it's less socialist than Australia. And as far as I can tell, it's probably more democratic than Australia is. If corporations are paying for our elections and then it comes down to 2 people, really? There's 350 people in America, and they really only have 2 candidates normally that they let you pick from. And it's kind of like, hey, if there's 2 bad choices in a race, it doesn't matter who you bet on, you're going to lose. And that's kind of what our elections are in the West. Now, so anyway, and if you think about it, a corporation is a mini dictatorship. And nobody argues about that. Everybody goes, oh, that's fantastic. It's your money, it's your capital. Now, I'm a business owner. I've been a business owner all my life, so I can talk about this. But and I've got a factory in Australia and that, so I do know about these things. But there's a constant conflict in our economic system in the West, and laws have been made now that have caused this situation where really wealthy people can get super wealthy and the profits stay at the top tier. They stay in that top 1% to 5% of people at absolute most in the country. And the middle class, all the way down to the bottom 20% as it were, the middle class in all Western democracies has been making less and less money every year. And that's really a crime in our developed countries. Now, if you compare that to Vietnam, Vietnam's middle class is growing, it's booming. Everybody's buying a car and a motorbike and a house and building on their house, and the middle class here is booming. Their interest rate on business loans is 5%. 5%, because, and it should be. It makes no sense at all that the West is talking about negative interest rates. Are they mental? This is absolutely mental. You imagine, hey, You're a business entrepreneur. I'll give you $1 million to take some risks in business. And at the end of the year, it doesn't matter whether you've lost that million or what, I'm going to give you some more money on that interest. Right? A negative interest rate. I'm going to pay you some more money at the end of the year. So for argument's sake, if it went to 5% negative, on that $1 million, at the end of the year, I'm going to give you another $50,000. And then at the end of the year, I'm going to give you another $50,000. And that's a 20-year loan, buddy. I'm going to give you $50,000 every year for 20 years. And then after 20 years, I'm going to turn around and go, look, mate, sorry, I blew you $1 million 20 years ago, and I've just been living on the interest since then. But I'll tell you what, loan me some more money, I'll have another chop at it. It makes no sense. There has to be a risk and reward situation in economics. That's by definition, that is how it has to be. Now, so the Western society has just really buggered up all of this situation here. And it's got deep roots, but it comes down to corporations lobbying governments to pass laws to push money up into the top echelons and pull it out of the middle class. And they've been doing it for 50 years. And now we're in this situation where our middle classes in the West are dying. Now, my thought on that is that the West and powers all know that they're going to go to war sometime. And if your middle class is basically happy, if they've got enough money to eat and they've got enough money to buy a car and live, then they're not going to war. And this was true even in the 1900s. So they called it the Roaring Twenties, right? In 1920, it was said that a lady could buy a set of silk gloves and wear them once and throw them away because industrial production was making these things so cheap they could just throw them away. Now, 10 years later, or 12 years later, 1932, the whole world's in a Great Depression, right? And if you look at the opulence of society now, in the last 10 years and what everybody's been doing in the West, it really kind of echoes back to that time. And there's some people that you study on this, it's actually the Elliot wave theory and GAN theory that talks about why this happens in cycles, and it's a 90-year cycle. And I think that it's the stripping away of wealth that the middle class really has got too much money again, and so they're in accumulated assets. And the only way to take away accumulated assets is with a depression, because people hold on to their house and they hold on to their cars and they hold on to things that are assets, and they might work all their life to pay them off, but really, they're not working as hard as they could work, and corporations could get a lot more out of them and hire them a lot cheaper if we send them broke, right? So I think that this is part of the motive. Now, if it goes that far, who knows, but at very least, what they're doing is going, America's got 1.3 or 4 million people with coronavirus now, and they've got all these people that are out on the streets testing, and all of these corporations making huge amounts of money out of the initiatives that have gone into place to fight the coronavirus, and that wouldn't have happened. Corporations wouldn't have made any money. The corporations in Vietnam have made bugger all out of the coronavirus. I mean, how much money can you make out of 300 people, right? But 1.4 million people getting the virus, you can make some serious money out of that. And I think that's why America decided to go down that path with the coronavirus. I don't think it's a mistake. I feel sorry for everybody that lives in America and is the victim of policymakers that do that. But when you have a president that stands up there and says, "Oh, this is just like a cold, it's no big deal. Maybe we can treat it with disinfectant. What about putting disinfectant inside the body? Maybe that's a good idea." Really? you know, it's mind-blowing that a president could be that stupid. Now, I don't think he's that stupid. I think that it's far easier for him to look stupid than it is for him to look negligent. If he looks stupid, people go, oh, they feel a bit sorry for the stupid person running the country. But if he looks negligent, people go, let's kick him out now. You know, like he's negligently not looking after this situation. And so I think that's really the crux of what's going on with the coronavirus in all the Western countries. Now, there's a lot of people to make a lot of money out of this. They just had to get a lot of people infected with it first, and then they were right, you know. And the only interviews, like I've seen a BBC interview with a Vietnam consular official, as it were, and the BBC guy was tearing strips off the Vietnamese official and saying, well, how can we believe your numbers and that, and your government probably lies, and it's so easy to do that when you've got a totalitarian government that can just, you know, tell people what to do. But it's not like that. Everybody here wanted to stop the virus, because if they get the virus, it kills their old people, and they love their old people. They don't want their old people dying, you know, and you know, so they just, everybody came together and shut down businesses and stayed at home and wore masks and socially distanced and reported people and filled out government forms at the nth degree if you travelled or if you know, did things. But people were very happy to do that, and the government was doing it because the people wanted them to do it. The people wanted them to stop the virus quickly and efficiently, you know. So I think, you know, I'm just glad that I was in Vietnam for the coronavirus 2020. I couldn't have thought of a better place in the world to be, actually. They handled the virus really well. There's one UK lady I saw on a radio interview on YouTube, and she was saying she was so worried about her parents that were in Vietnam and they were quarantined, and the hospital they quarantined in had rats in it, and the floor was dirty and everything was terrible. Well, that's probably true, but that's just the normal situation in Vietnam. They didn't mistreat them because they were from the UK and brought the virus with them, right? They just put them in hospital and tried to give them the best care that they could, and quarantine them. It wasn't the government here going, oh, hey, we're going to give you a rat-infested room to sleep in for 2 weeks, you know. It is true that the government here doesn't have heaps of capital that they throw around for socialist things, as it were. You know, if you want the road out front of your house here fixed up, you pay for it. You know, the whole street gets together and puts some money in a pot, and they pay to get their road fixed. You know, the government will do some things, but it doesn't do everything. If you want stuff done, you pay for it here. Your taxes are only 5%, and that's why. Now, that doesn't sound like a socialist country to me. It is communist, but it doesn't sound like it's socialist, right? Now, America and Australia, they're bailing out every company that's there. Oh, boo-hoo-hoo, we're losing some money with the coronavirus, and we're all shut down, and it's terrible. Well, which is terrible, and it's killing people's livelihoods. And was there, you know, if the government had acted quickly and decisively, it wouldn't have had to happen. Right? So it is the government's fault. It's the government's fault in those countries that they didn't act quickly and decisively to treat the threat seriously and save their people. But and I mean, you know, I think it stands to reason why. Anyway, make sure you hit the bell, which I know because I'm recording, it's on the opposite side to what I think it is. So it's either on that side or it's on that side. I always forget. Anyway, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, you know, and if you put some notes in the comments for me, I always respond to my comments. You know, when I've only got, you know, a few subscribers, that's easy. Next week when I've got 100 million subscribers, maybe not so easy, so be patient with me, I'll get through them. Yeah, anyway, cheers.